we're focusing on National Federation of High School, new rules, points of emphasis for the 2021 season. On Monday, we had a master class. On Wednesday, the basketball rules expert. You can find a link to the entire playlist, the 3 shows put together, up above and in the show notes below. Right. Okay. So today we're looking at plays to support that. New points of emphasis for National Federation of High School. Screening, whether they are legal or illegal. Traveling, the Euro step, spin move, jump stops being ruled inaccurately. We want to take a look at those. Timeout requests being granted, ensuring that during live ball play, there is player control before granting a timeout. These are the areas we're going to focus today on 5 Play Friday. Stick around. Greetings and welcome back to another episode of 5 Play Friday, the show where we look at plays, take positives, negatives, positioning, whether the correct official made the correct call. We are looking to get better as basketball officials, and video analysis is the #1 way to do that. Greetings again, everybody. My name is Greg Austin with abetterofficial.com. We craft video to help basketball officials get better and take control of their officiating career. Now would be a great time. Like, subscribe, notify so you don't miss out on any of our new content, including live streams every Wednesday and Friday, and an occasional Monday as well. Any new content you don't want to miss out, hit the notification bell to do so. All right. Got to thank our fantastic channel supporters, without whom the show would not be possible. Jeff Jewett, Freddie Krieger, Anthony Cicciarelli, Jay Ship, and Luis Fuentes. Much appreciated and much love. You want to support the show, there's always an opportunity to head to betterofficial.com/coffee, and you know we're going to put a link in the show notes below. All right, today we are focusing on the points of emphasis from National Federation of High School, new rules and points of emphasis for 2021-2022 season. We're going to look at plays. We are going to get better as basketball officials. Again, when we look at points of emphasis, they come out, traveling is a point of emphasis, right? Do we need more traveling calls? Not necessarily. Do we need fewer traveling calls? Not necessarily. Do we need more accurate rulings about traveling? Absolutely. And that's the focus. It's like understanding the rules and restrictions and applying the rules and making proper rulings in the game. That's what points of emphasis are all about, right? In this area, NFHS says, in this area, officials as a whole, not necessarily you, not necessarily me, but officials as a whole are displaying inconsistency. There's a misunderstanding of the rules, etc., or their misapplication of the rules. This is an area of focus. Screening is, again, the edges have become frayed as a group of officials, right? We need to just tighten it up and have a better adjudication of those plays. And those are the plays we're going to be looking at today on 5 Play Friday. Today we're focusing on points of emphasis. Let's take a look at our very first play supplied by Jeff Jewett. Awesome play. Excellent. A lot going on this play. A lot of elements to look at. I'm losing that. What we have is a situation where the ball becomes loose. Two players go to the floor in an attempt to collect the ball. Coach, sensing his players in trouble, vigorously indicating a timeout request. Not recognized by the center official across the floor. You could say, okay, he wasn't aware, or he was disregarding. We have got the trail official right next to the coach who does not respond to the request. Does the trail official have information about whether there is player control here? Right? That's the question. The answer is no. We have the same camera angle. Does the player have control? It's not obvious from our angle, and it would be worse for the trail who's down at court level. But the lead comes in with granting of the timeout. Did they have the information that they needed, right? A lot of dynamics here going on. So first of all, let's look at the positioning of our crew. We always have to look at the positioning of our crew and see how it affected whether or not we got the situation adjudicated properly. Center is working high. This is fine as the ball approaches them. And they obviously accept the on-ball matchup. Trail official recognizes that the center has picked up that matchup and looks to step down, anticipating a rotation by the lead. We have 6 players on that half of the court, and the ball has settled in that area, right? When that pass occurs, our lead should be in transition, moving over. Problem is, lead is saying, I am going to stay in this spot and observe the game. They are looking at the 6 players across the court, right? Anytime we're at lead and we are looking across the court and just observing, right, we are missing a fundamental concept of working 3-person mechanics, and that is the lead needs to move and make the crew whole in their positioning on this play. Have the opportunity to do so. The ball gets loose, right, at this point. Center official is looking right at the play. 2 players go to the floor. It's unclear from this angle who has control of the ball. What we have, I think, is the defensive player had the red player had their arm around the ball, and then the ball was pulled by white, and so his arm was pinned in back there. But in any event, it's unclear. And simultaneously, the lead recognizes the timeout request, which the trail was obviously ignoring, because they were not sure there was player control on the play. So we have simultaneous whistles, emphatically saying timeout, 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 which is great if properly adjudicated. Right? If we watch the coach, he's requesting, he's frustrated. Finally, a timeout is granted, right? He turns to the trail like, what the heck are you doing? I was calling a timeout, right? So we get this dynamic between the crew. These plays are so vibrant. Dynamic between the crew. It's like, you are the bad official. And then he gives our calling official a little pat on the back. You are the good official, right? Interesting. Always interesting to recognize these dynamics on the play. Also recognize the trail's body language, right? When the timeout is ruled by the lead. Trail's body language, is that like great call partner body language, or something else? Right? When we watch our game video, we want to see our response, our body language when we respond to partners making rulings on the court, etc. And if we start adjusting our equipment or putting our hands on our hips or wiping our brow or touching our face, etc., these are all kind of tells about what we think about the rulings. So these are all really interesting things to point out. In the end, the point of emphasis is ensuring player control during live ball. Does the player have control? Yes. The team, any player, or the head coach can request and be granted a timeout. In the absence of that, in the absence of player control, they may not be granted legally a timeout. Cool. So a great example, thank you, Jeff Jewett, for supplying the clip. A great example of what the NFHS point of emphasis is. Now, if the player has player control, this is a great call. If the player does not, which the center official looking right at the play was coming in with a held ball ruling, then we have, then we have an erroneous application by the lead in this instance. This is the point of emphasis. Ensure player control before granting a timeout. A great first clip to get us started on 5 Play Friday. Thanks, Jeff Jewett, for supplying that clip. Much appreciated. Let's take a look now at another video. All right. Good clip, right? So screening is a point of emphasis this year. Understanding what is illegal, legal and illegal screening. Let's just do that. And the official on the play rules an illegal screen, right? Let's just, this is a 2-person game. Illegal screen using old mechanics, so we're no longer using the punch signal. Turns away from the play, exhibits that habit. Notes that the ball entered the basket, so wipes the play to get that right and designate the spot on the end line. All attributes. This is a 2-person game. We're going to switch this. The calling official will be administering the resulting throw-in. So these are sort of the basics of the play from the mechanics side. So this is a dribble handoff, right? We see a lot more of these plays these days. We need to judge the legality of that dribbler who then becomes a screener on the play, right? This is obviously illegal contact, contacting the defender in the fashion that they did. Not really a close play. We've got a skilled big man, has excellent footwork, etc. Timing on this play was all wrong. Right. So, point of emphasis, screening, legal screening, understanding what illegal screening is. On our very first play here, we have a dribble handoff play that have become more prevalent and we need to be aware of. Once that ball, the dribbler gives up the ball, they become a screener on this play. And rules about screening apply to the player. All right, so so we get going on a screening play, looking at the legality of screening action. A point of emphasis. Let's take a look at another screening play. All right, so we're going to stay in play number 2 mode. We're going to riff off of that. Let's take a look at another play. All right. So again, we have a screening a moving opponent scenario. In that instance, we need to be aware of what is legal and what is illegal by screeners. When screening a moving opponent, they must be given the opportunity to avoid the screen. If they are given the opportunity to avoid the screen, then they are responsible for avoiding the screen. These are the two factors, right? Offensive players are not allowed to push through screens or displace screeners when the screener is in a legal position. On this play, we need to make a judgment about whether time and distance was allowed by the screener. Right? Our screener has established their position on this play. 1, 2, boom, right? Time and distance is a judgment call, usually to a minimum of 1 step. These are long strides by the moving opponent. This screener is legal by rule. And so in this situation, we can have a lot of contact on a play. But what we don't have on this play is displacement. Again, when we officiate the big against the small, right, it forces us as officials to really evaluate plays. The contact of running into the player doesn't rise to the level of a foul necessarily. If we have displacement on a play, then we have a foul, right? So our small player, the bug on the wall, basically bounces off of our firmed up screener. That is incidental contact, but a great example of a legal screen because the player allowed for time and distance. So a great example of a legal screen because the defender was allowed, the teammate allowed the defender time and distance to avoid the screen. So we've had an illegal screen, we've had a legal screen. Let's take a look at another screening play as part of our play 2 sequence. Right? So elevator play, a common set that teams use and employ. If a team exhibits that they are going to be using elevator plays, we need as a crew to recognize, first of all, that these plays may occur. Now this one comes straight up the middle, right? But also teams run elevator plays going to the side. They're going to obviously require more than one official to officiate this kind of action. And we need to, if we anticipate it, the plays get easy. If we are not anticipating it and we see the explosion, right, that occurs on this play, we could put and we didn't have complete information, our whistle may be a reactive whistle and not a proactive whistle where we have evaluated the whole play and the legality of the play. So as we know from our previous play, we must give time and distance when screening a moving opponent. Does that occur on this play? Right? Moving opponent, the 2 players at the elbow, their job is to set screens. Right? Time and distance, our screener does not give time and distance on this play. So we have an illegal screen by rule. It's important here because the result of the play is displacement of the screener. The player that she was attempting to screen is having none of that and blows right through that. Very strong player. Right? So this is an illegal screen by rule. team control foul. Yes, you know, we're using the proper mechanic. I'm sure if we'd seen the center official, they were using the proper mechanic. Also, though, recognize the trail official, right? Not in a great position for a throw-in play, but recognize that when the whistle blows, they are oblivious to the action, right? They, we're not aware at all. They're just focusing on the on-ball matchup, right? And this can happen if we have elevator plays, if we have screening action that occurs off ball that we did not see, then we could say, oh, something just happened, and react to it, right? Obviously, in this instance, we'd want our trail official to step down, be 28-foot line, and also be more open to the play, right? If we have our shoulders open here, we can have a look on the on-ball matchup, but be aware of the activity that's occurring in the lane on this play. So again, another screening of a moving opponent play must give time and distance. Being aware of that as basketball officials puts us in the very best position to adjudicate these plays properly. Another screening play that gives us a chance to make judgments about screening a moving opponent. Point of emphasis, National Federation of High School, 2021-2022. Let's move on to our next point of emphasis, which is traveling. Specifically, Euro steps, spin moves, and jump stops. When we evaluate traveling restrictions, we must start with an understanding of and a recognition of which foot is the pivot foot. Performing a Euro step is not an illegal activity. Lifting a pivot foot and returning it to the floor is a legal activity. If officials are more focused on, well, I have a feel about plays, and say, I know I'm supposed to look for the pivot foot and all that, but I'd rather, if I see the play, I can tell if it's a travel. If it looks funny or whatever, it rises to that level. If that's the basis of their adjudication, they are at risk of getting plays wrong. NFHS says, I think we have too many officials who are in that boat, and they're not properly recognizing when pivot foot is lifted or returned to the floor. So let's take a look at some Euro step plays provided by show supporter Freddie Krieger. Much appreciated, Freddie. Let's take a look. Right? So sort of a classic Euro step. Note that the aspect of the Euro step that makes it an effective move is there is a change of direction. They're basically stepping from, they get a defender moving one way, step laterally to a large extent to complete the move. But the question always is, which is the pivot foot, right? When the player picks up the ball, which is the pivot foot? On this play, the player picks up the ball and their right foot is the pivot foot. They then step with the left, a long step, and lay the ball in without returning the right foot to the floor. This is a legal play by rule because, just like with a legal layup, the pivot foot is lifted but not returned to the floor. The timing of these plays and the change of direction, right? Sometimes the change of direction is accompanied by a severe slowdown, right? That allows the defender to fly out of the way. If we just respond to the timing of the play, we are at risk of getting the play wrong. If we are focused on which is the pivot foot and whether or not it was returned to the floor or not, then the plays become really easy. So on this play, we have sort of the classic Euro step, properly executed, legal play by rule. The resulting foul of course, on this play. Also, when I see a play like this, and we have sort of potentially a hard foul, right, really hard across the arm, we need, as officials, to just recognize that a hard foul occurred. And when the players then, right, this action here, right, the two players end up sort of in proximity with one another, and you could have a situation where something is said, right? And we just need to be aware of that, right? The foul has occurred. The players are then stepping back on the court in close proximity with one another. Doesn't appear like anything occurs on this play, not at all. But we just need to, after the hard foul, this was not all that hard, but maybe, a significant rake on the arm, something is said, right, between the players. We just need to be aware of that on this play. So a legal Euro step play provided by Freddie Krieger. Much appreciated, Freddie, for putting that in the game for us. Thanks so much. All right. So a legal example. Let's take a look at another Euro step play and analyze that one. Right, another Euro step coming right at us. Again, note the attributes of the move are, picking the ball up with a right foot pivot, changing direction, right? Changing the tempo, moving fast, 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 slow, and laying the ball in, right? Those are the traps that some officials are getting hung up on, is the timing and the look funny and something seemed a little off, etc. But if we just evaluate on whether right foot, left foot, legal play by rule. The dribble is terminated when the player is holding the ball, right? It's going to be the time between when their previous pivot foot comes off the floor and them catching the ball is very slight, but it's the catching of the ball that terminates the dribble. Legal play by rule. Euro steps are not often traveling violations because all they are is a change in tempo and direction, right? Sometimes that change in tempo can be extreme, but the play can still be legal. Officials who are not geared to focusing on the pivot foot, lift and return, are at risk of getting these plays wrong. So NFHS says, let's do a better job of recognizing the pivot foot so that we can get these plays right. All right, one more Euro step. Let's take a look. Obviously not a Euro step. So spin moves are also a point of emphasis pointed out by National Federation of High School. Spin move legality, plays being properly adjudicated. As we spoke on during the masterclass on Monday, when larger, slower players execute these moves, it's a lot easier to administer or to adjudicate the plays because everything's just sort of done in slow motion. So again, we're not focusing on whether this is an excellent move executed deftly by in this case, a larger player. She's a very skilled player. This is a collegiate game, thus the uniforms. But the question is all about the pivot foot. right? We obviously have a left foot pivot foot, and then the left foot is returned to the floor. It's as simple as that. Left foot is our pivot foot. It's lifted and returned to the floor. Now we know at other levels in the NBA, there's something known as a zero step or a gather step, right? Players see those plays executed and they say, oh, I could do that. And maybe they're even trained by trainers, coaches who don't know the rules for high school basketball. This is an illegal move. It's obvious, right? It's not even in question that the left foot was the pivot foot. The move is made. It's a very deft and athletic move, but in the end, the pivot foot is returned. If the player had simply spun and pivoted and shot the ball off of their right foot in this instance, it would be a legal play. But returning the pivot foot to the floor is illegal by rule. Call correct, right? Let's take a look at another spin move. Right. So again, a larger, slower player, even though displaying skill here, does a couple of things, right? So when the player picks up the ball, their left foot is their pivot foot, right? No, the right foot is their pivot foot. Come on, ref. Right? At this point, the player has picked up the ball and their right foot is their pivot foot. There's actually a small hop, a movement of the pivot foot. It's very discreet, but ultimately the pivot foot is lifted and returned to the floor prior to the player leaving the floor. Violation by rule. Again, if this player had simply stepped with their left foot and shot the ball, it would be a legal move if you pass on the slight hop with the foot initially. But spin move executed by a larger player helps us evaluate whether or not the pivot foot was lifted and returned to the floor. This is a violation by rule. No call on this play. Our crew got it wrong. Now let's move to a play with a player who's a little bit quicker. Right. The speed increases, and sometimes that can catch the officials unaware, catch them off guard. On this play, there was no call. But again, it's all about pivot foot lifting and returning. On this play, the player's clearly holding their ball, and their right foot is their pivot foot. A deft spin, and the right foot returns to the floor. Simple, straightforward, legal, illegal. This is an illegal play by rule. It's the lifting of the pivot foot and the return to the floor. Really straightforward. This kid, number 33 here, the big kid for white, is now a San Francisco 49er. That's Aaron Banks. He was a very, again, we talk about big players being deft and skillful, their footwork, etc. We've had several larger players, not necessarily tall players, but larger players in the show today with a good balance and footwork, body control, etc. And it's, oh man, we talk about having skilled ball handlers in our game. When big players are skillful, oh man, it takes so much. It makes the job of the official so much easier, right? To have skilled big men. And if they had landed simultaneously, it would be a legal move, as we'll see in our very next play scenario. Right. We see a lot of players attempting step back moves. Very popularized at other levels. Players executing step back moves, James Harden, etc. in the NBA. It's a very common move in the NBA. In the NBA, they have something called a zero step, which allows a player to gather on one foot and take a staggered landing with their other 2 feet. Legal for them, but not at the high school level. Now, so a lot of players attempt step back moves with utilizing sort of an understanding based on the NBA, and those moves are illegal by rule. This clip, which we've used in the past, shows a player terminating their dribble. Let's see. Terminating their dribble here with their right foot as their pivot foot. What are they allowed to do legally? Jumps in the air and lands with both feet simultaneously. This is a legal move by rule, specifically made legal in the rules book. A player is allowed to terminate, jump off one foot, land on 2 feet, as long as the 2 feet are simultaneous, and then not use either foot as a pivot foot. So we see this, we see players in the perimeter, three-point shooters especially, trained to catch jumping off of one foot and landing on 2 feet simultaneously as they go into their shot release. This is a legal play by rule, and the player should have been awarded a foul for the resulting contact on this play. Great play. Thanks again to Freddie Krieger for providing that clip. Really appreciate it. A great clip of a legally executed move. This kid is obviously extremely skilled, and we love skilled players in our game. So again, point of emphasis from National Federation of High School is becoming more accurate with our rulings. Accuracy. Understanding the rule and ruling accurately. Not more travels, not less travels, accurate traveling rulings. Okay, we've looked at plays, we've looked at areas of focus, timeout administration, ensuring in a live ball situation that there is player control established before granting, even though a request is made, before granting, ensuring that there is player control. We've looked at some screening action, talked about legality of screening, moving opponents, looking at the right things at the right time to officiate those plays. And we've talked about traveling, spin moves, Euro steps, step back. All of these things are areas of focus. We want to have a solid understanding of what's illegal and what's legal so that we can adjudicate plays more properly. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you found value here. If you did, now would be a great time to do all the things. Hit like, subscribe, and notify so you don't miss out on any of our new content. Thanks today to our channel supporters, Jeff Jewett, Freddie Krieger, Anthony Ciccarelli, Jay Ship, and Luis Fuentes. Much appreciated, much love. You want to support the show, you can always head over to abetterofficial.com/coffee and become a channel supporter. There'll be a link above and in the show notes below. We have the other 2 videos in the series available here. We've got the masterclass, we've got the basketball rules expert. Together, let's all get better together. See you in the very next video. Take care.